So it's a VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. And when it's a VUCA world, to survive that, to not kind of shut down on it, you need to be developing your own sense of personal resilience. You need to be strengthening that ability to stay flexible, to bounce back, to stay present, so that you don't opt out of your life, but you actually step forward and do the good work and the great work that you're called forth to do. So I've got 4 books that are on my bookshelf, that I keep on my bookshelf, but I just want to share with you that I think are really useful ways of actually tackling and thinking about resilience, and just to share some of the key lessons that I've taken from them, because there may be something useful there for you as well. The first book I want to talk about is a classic. It's from Steven Pressfield, The War of Art. So you can see immediately it's a nice pun on a nice play on this sense of the art of war from Sun Tzu, I think it was, a real classic military tome. But The War of Art, what's brilliant about Steven Pressfield here is he makes manifest this sense of resistance that all artists feel. And by artists, he's really talking about human beings. If you're up to anything, if you're up to great work, if you're up to anything that matters to you, resistance shows up and says to you, why don't you just stop doing that? Why don't you just take a lie down? Why don't you take the easy path? And what's really powerful for me in this book is he just lays down the fact that this is a battle between resistance and your willingness to give in to the resistance, just to stop doing the thing that you need to do. You know, I think he quotes in here Chuck Close, who's an artist, who says, amateurs wait for inspiration to arrive. Professionals, we just show up and we do the work. And really what he talks about in The War of Art is the discipline to keep showing up and keep doing the work, even while part of you goes, it would be just so much easier to quit altogether. You know, when I wrote my first book, I actually hired a coach to say, your job is to keep me writing this book. I will find any excuse I can to not write this book. I will take other gigs, I'll do work I don't want to do, I'll start writing other things altogether. And her job was to keep my nose to the grindstone, to say, look, as the resistance shows up, I will help push you through that resistance and develop my own muscles so I can actually self-manage my way through that resistance. The second book I want to talk to you about is Seth Godin's book, The Dip. So this is a classic Seth Godin book. It's short, it's sweet, it has a key metaphor. How do I get through the dip around this? And I think it's extremely powerful and extremely useful. It reminds me of a couple of my favorite quotes. The first is from Edwin Land. He's the inventor of the Polaroid. That didn't work out so well in the end, but at the time it's fantastic. And he says this: don't undertake a project unless it is manifestly important and nearly impossible. I love that challenge that Land puts through there. The other quote is from a poet, Bukowski. And Bukowski says, if you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. So why The Dip? The subtitle of The Dip is the little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. Really, you feel like the book is going to say, let me give you some excuses for opting out of things. Really, the key challenge that Seth Godin lays down in this book is, it's a call to step away from mediocrity. It's pretty much either do it and do it well and be bold and be ambitious and strive to do your best. In other words, do more great work. Or stop doing it altogether. Choose to step away from it. What you don't want to be caught in is in that timid middle, in the middle, where you're doing mediocrity, where you're hanging in there, where you're not really pushing hard, but you're not really freeing up time and space and capacity to do other things that matter. So for me, I think this is a really critical book around resilience, which is it's forcing you to make choices. It says to you, look, for you to be resilient, you need to be connected to the work that matters. To do the work that matters, you need to commit to it fully, the Bukowski quote, the Edwin Land quote, or you need to say no to it. Don't be stuck in that middle place where it's miserable, it's difficult, but you haven't got the courage to say no or to more fully say yes to that. The third book I want to point you to is actually by a friend of mine here in Toronto, Cindy Noble, and it's called Conflict Mastery, Questions to Guide You. So Cindy is pretty much the best coach I know in terms of managing and helping her clients manage conflict resolution. She works with all sorts of interesting clients. You have people like border guards who are up with conflict all the time. And in this book, she's really collected some of her very best insights and best knowledge about how do you manage conflict. How's this connected to resilience? Well, I think one of the things that stops us being resilient is we back away from conflict. We go, oh, that's too difficult, that's too hard, that's too scary, and it is a bit scary. But this capacity to say, you know what, my ability to manage conflict, to step into conflict, to navigate conflict in a way that's graceful and respectful of the other person and respectful of myself is a way that you get things done. So I think this ability to not wimp out of the difficult conversation, not to back away from things that might be too difficult because it involves conflict with another person, is a key way to build that resilience muscle of your own. And I think in Cindy's book, you got something very interesting in terms of some really key questions and key insights to think about how will you manage conflict more successfully. And the fourth and final book I want to talk to you about is Adapt by Tim Harford. He's an economist. He wrote, his first book is called The Undercover Economist. And I love the title here. It really plays into this theme of resilience, and it is why success always starts with failure. And there are a couple of things in particular I took from this about how to build a system, a way of operating that will increase your own resilience. And the first is this concept of decoupling. And here's a metaphor to help you with understanding what decoupling is. Think of one of those lines of dominoes, you know, the ones that you set up, and the idea is you tip one over and then they all fall over. And what happens is that is a non-decoupled system. It's all interacted. But what would make that system more resilient if you didn't want the dominoes to fall would be to pull out some of the key dominoes so that if one fell over, you didn't then have the other 9,753 dominoes you just spent 2 days setting up fall over as well. It actually, the system breaks and 9,571 dominoes remain standing even though 3 have fallen. So I think this sense of going, how do I decouple elements of my life so that if something fails, my whole life doesn't implode around that? And for me, one of the ways of decoupling that is to build distinct and discrete different areas to work in. So building not just one key relationship, say at work, but building 4 key relationships. So if one fails, you've got 3 other key relationships to work on. As you develop a project, it's not committing to one single way of moving forward, but to potentially develop other prototypes that may or may not work so that those may move forward in case one of them fails. The sense of decoupling, developing other options that will remain viable even if one fails, can be extremely powerful. The second part that I picked up from this book, Adapt, is this phrase, don't chase failure. I think this is such a powerful, it was an aha moment for me when I read that, which is sometimes when we fail, we think to ourselves, to maintain my dignity, to maintain my honor, to maintain face, I need to fix that. I need to chase it. I need to make it somehow better. I'm going to fix the thing that's been broken. And sometimes the thing to do is to walk away from that. You know the saying, if it's the wrong hole, you have to stop digging. And so I think this capacity to actually say, okay, this is the failure, this didn't work, rather than doubling down, putting bad money, good money after bad, I'm going to step away from that, walk away from that failure, stop chasing the loss, and go and build the next piece. In some ways, this is another example of what decoupling can look like. So personal resilience, we need it just to maintain our sense of ourselves, to better navigate this complicated, ambiguous, uncertain world. And I think some of the key concepts from these 4 books can help you develop and build your own sense of resilience so that you can do less good work and more great work.